Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Errol Spence has called out Terrence Crawford. I just did a video on that, but listen, people, this is going to be the problem. And this is what people need to talk about, right? So, Spence calls out Crawford. We know there was a big issue. Who wants a 50-50 split? Who wants a 60-40 split, 70-30? Spence went on record and said he was just, joking about the 70-30. 60-40 seemed fair because Spence had 2 belts, Crawford had 1. But if you look at what Spence has done, coming back from the car accident, beating Danny Garcia convincingly, beating Sean Porter convincingly, everyone he's got in the ring with convincingly, and then coming and just annihilating Yordenis Ugas convincingly. Errol Spence deserves 80%. I don't care what Crawford says. Crawford, you're not doing anything. Your promotional struggles affected you. Now, you're a fantastic fighter. I would favor you to beat Spence, honestly. Because Ugas, when he let his hands go, was very effective. But it was just overwhelmed, man. Volume of punches. He just didn't have nothing for him. Ugas just didn't have an answer. He just got outworked. And obviously, Spence has some power. And the thing, when you watch Spence, to an untrained eye, it doesn't look like anything special. He's just plodding along, letting his hands go. But if you look at the angles that he's coming in at, look how he'll come in, rest his head on this side of you, use his head to create space, then throw the uppercut. But he's off on an angle the way you can't hit him. Then he hits you. Then when you step, he steps with you. Then he counters again. Then he comes back, moves his head to the other side, hits his shoulder into you, but he's making sure you can't get yours off. And hits you, steps with you. When he comes back, he's jabbing on his way out so you can't get nothing off. Then he resets. Then he leads with a straight left hand. Like, his array of punches is just crazy. His ability to use his body, his shoulder, his forehead, his angles, everything, his arms, use what you do great against you is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So with him and Crawford, it's going to be tough, man, to make that fight because Crawford did a lot at 140. He did. But this ain't 140, Crawford. Your resume looks good. It does, but you haven't come out here and done much at 147. And see, this is the thing a lot of fight fans need to understand. Errol Spence is like a damn miracle man. That man, Errol Spence deserves 80%. I don't care. But to make the fight happen, make it 70-30. Okay? Just based on resumes. Now let's take the belts into consideration. You guys, people got to understand what happened here. The significance of Errol Spence having 3 belts. It's been a while since that's happened. Thurman had 2. And then Spence came and picked up 2. You know what I'm saying? And now Spence picked up 3. Okay? Look at AJ. AJ had them belts up there in the heavyweight division. He was the man. Anybody wanting to fight, come through him. You got to take that 80-20. You don't have a say. You bring him, and Deontay Wilder, when he came over, they were looking to give him a flat rate. They may give Crawford a flat rate of $5 million. Most money he probably ever make in his career. And then after that, Spence gets everything else. Like, he has the upper hand. Spence has the upper hand. And if Crawford doesn't want to take that fight, well, then Spence can go on and fight other top contenders at 147 and make real money. Having the fights in Dallas, sell out 40,000 seats. They can, expand the capacity to probably get another 10,000 in there. I swear he was in London, England, selling out 40, 50, 60, $80,000 seated stadiums. That's what Spence is becoming. Spence is the damn welterweight AJ. I'm telling y'all, he's the welterweight AJ. He calls the shots. He's the big fish. He's the big fish. And somebody need to scale that fish, man, and put some, thyme and oregano and green seasoning, and onion and garlic on there. Some curry powder, man. Some coconut milk. And curry that big fish. But none of them guys can do it. Nobody out there know what to do. They don't know how to clean that and prepare that. That is not easy to fish, and once you get your hands on it, how do you manage it? You know what I'm saying? Spence is a monster, man. I'm telling you, that guy, let me tell you, Spence is a monster. I still think Bud beats him. I think Bud beats him because Bud's not Ugas. Bud's not going to stand there and let you get those shots off. I don't know. Ugas was froze, man. He was standing there with that high guard. And you could see his face changing over the rounds. Ugas' face, you can see that eye swelling. His face turning red, started to get puffy. Then the eyes started closing. Then he got hit and it looked like his legs buckled. Then he started covering up more, backpedaling. It's like, you can see the tide shifted. And it's like, damn, Spence is breaking him down. And the referee had to stop the fight because Ugas would have kept fighting. But tonight was not the night for the Cubans. But Ugas has nothing to feel ashamed about. He fought hard. He really did. But Errol Spence is special, man. And Terrence Crawford is special. Terrence Crawford just has so much chaos in his life when it comes to promotions, fighting, being active. Terrence Crawford's in a horrible position. Horrible. And, if his stuff would have been straight, Terrence Crawford could have probably been a unified champion. He could have picked up a belt along the way, another belt. But, he just didn't have his stuff together. And now look what happened. He's at a huge disadvantage as far as bargaining. He doesn't bring much to the table, man. He's got the WBO belt, man. I mean, okay. But Spence has some big belts on him, man. And I think for Terrence Crawford, right now he got to sit down and try to figure things out. He really does. He's got to figure things out. And I don't know who's advising him. I don't know. It was supposed to be signed with Al Heyman, a few fights for like $10 or $15 million or something like that. But there's a lot of rumors floating around and a lot of speculation. Nothing definitive. Hopefully something definitive surfaces, and sooner than later we can get the talks going, juices flowing, and have the match made, because this is horrible. Terrence Crawford's not getting any younger. Errol Spence is 33. I don't even know what people consider Terrence Crawford to not be in his prime anymore. Or is he kind of on the downward side, but still able to perform at an elite level? Now, of course, he's not Yuriorkis Gamboa, of course, to that extreme on the tail end of his career. But Crawford has to do something. If he's going to make his move, he's got to make his move this year. He can't wait another 2 years, man. I'll tell you, man, he's got to do it if he's going to do it at a welterweight. And Errol Spence is the guy. And he needs to do it against, because you get one fight. Forget about the money split. For all the belts. If he beats Errol Spence, he's the man. And Eddie Hearn, let me tell you, you guys may not like Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn's a shrewd businessman. And when he puts together those contracts, they're always in his fighter's favor. But if you win twice, then, you get the lion's share of the money. And Terrence Crawford just has, I'm sure, when Spence and they put that contract together, he's gonna get the lion's share of everything. The first fight and the rematch, he'll probably still get the lion's share because he's the one putting up 3 belts. Crawford's putting up 1. It's like, people have learned from Eddie Hearn and how he and AJ manipulated those contracts. That's how Andy Ruiz got in there, and he got screwed the first 2 fights. Yeah, he made more money than he ever made, but Andy Ruiz winning as a champion and got paid as a challenger. In the second fight, he didn't win, so he didn't get a third fight. Devin Haney's getting screwed royally. But he believes in his skills. He's going to go over there. He should beat Kambosos. There'll be a rematch. He should beat Kambosos. And then maybe a third fight. And then that's when you see Devin Haney get the lion's share. If there's no third fight, then Devin Haney has to fight Lomachenko. And if he beats him, then there'll probably be a rematch or not. But the way Top Rank has that structure, Devin Haney, they just have trap after trap, pitfall after pitfall for Devin Haney to fail, so that Top Rank can retain all those belts. And they have Devin Haney under contract. So it just sucks when you see stuff like that, but it's smart business. And Errol Spence needs to take a note out of their books and say, hey, if you're going to fight me, first fight 80-20. If you beat me, the second fight 60-40 in your favor. If you beat me then the third fight, if we want to do it, then you get the 80-20. Or you go on and fight somebody else. And that's what I think. But if he's smart, he'll do it that way. 80-20, my favorites, if I win, then there is no second fight. You see, I go on about my business. I'm not going to give you a rematch. You brought nothing to the table. But if there's a rematch, then it's more like a 90-10 type deal. And, you know, for these fighters who never made $5, $6, $7, $8 million, you know, you can't come there and turn into a Dillian White and start complaining about the money you're making. Because what do you bring to the table? See, and that's what's frustrating. So Dillian White, I'm glad he's going to be fighting next weekend. We'll see what happens if he wins. Hey, in the second fight, he'll get more money. He still won't get the lion's share because he's not the draw. It doesn't matter if he has a belt, you know, a legitimate belt. It won't matter. But he clips him a second time, and he can call some shots. But he can't call him against Usyk. He can't call him against AJ, depending on who wins that fight, because there's 4 belts. Even though one of them don't matter, there's 4 belts. The WBC is the big one. We get it, but I mean, still, it's 4 belts. So he'll be back in another 80-20 split, or like a 70-30 split, and he'll be pissed off again. But that's just how it goes, and that's just business. And the guys with the belts, like I talked about in another video, talking about the resume. Look at the resume, man. We talk about appraisal value of homes. Your home's gonna be valued a little bit more if you have a few more things done to the house, things that make the house go up in value. With a boxer, your value's gonna be more when you have a few belts, opposed to someone who has none or one, or an illegitimate belt, or some intercontinental, some interim, all these stupid ass belts they have. You can't come there with someone who has a legitimate belt and multiple. You can't come there thinking you're gonna get a 50-50 split. But don't expect them to treat you fairly or be like, well, you know, you're a boxer and you put your life on it. Nobody wants to hear that. Your resume, what do you bring to the table? Okay. Barely anything here. Whatever we throw at you, you take and you shut up. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. It's just how it is, man. And I'd be the same way too. Unless you're just someone who, like a Jake Paul, and why I say that, because you're going to sell him, you could possibly sell 2 million pay-per-view with that guy alone because of his audience. So you got to treat him with respect. He could come with no belts. You got to pay him right. But none of these, who's really bringing that to the table right now? And we're talking about Spence and Crawford, so I definitely don't want to disrespect them by saying, comparing Jake Paul, him as a boxer to those guys. What I'm talking about is when you come to the table to negotiate, and you're talking about pay-per-view sales, you're talking about your resume, what do you bring to the table? For Terrence Crawford, just a belt. He doesn't sell pay-per-view. He's a phenomenal boxer. I think he beats Errol Spence after what I've seen tonight, if he can deal with the volume. But Crawford's not going to stand there. He's going to move around. He's slick. He's going to let his hands go. And, you know, when Spence comes in with some of those shots, Crawford's going to counter him. And it's going to be an interesting fight because Spence can hurt Crawford too. So we'll see what happens with those guys. But I'm telling you, man, when you have 3 belts, the other guy has 1, hey, y'all better get ready for some disgruntled Terrence Crawford, because the 80-20 split is how he's postured himself by not being active and dealing with a promoter who didn't believe in him and bad talked him and defamed his character, slandered his professionalism and his marketability, and now nobody wants to touch him. And that's horrible. And you know why nobody wants to touch him? Not because he's not great as a fighter. It's because money has been lost. And when it comes to these promoters, they're all about money, how they can make money, and that's how come Jake Paul is so popular right now. That's how come this exhibition bouts and these actors and these Hollywood people and these musicians, that's how they're all making all this money, because you can make money off them because they're marketable and they have an audience. Terrence Crawford is the man. I honestly believe that, but he just doesn't have an audience outside the diehard boxing fans. And he needs to figure that out. Now, if he fights in Nebraska with Errol Spence, that'll be a big showing. But Crawford he brings nothing to the table, man. He has no voice in this. Errol Spence has, and he's shutting people down to get those belts. So, you know, we'll see what happens, man. But in my opinion, Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence is going to be a struggle to make, because Crawford is delusional into what he wants to get paid. I think they should give him a flat rate, $8 million, and everything else, Errol Spence gets pay-per-view and everything else. And that'd be the most money Terrence Crawford was ever made or probably will ever make in one fight. And that's just my 2 cents. But anyway, shout out to all the veterans. Thanks for everybody for watching this video. Errol Spence, man, outstanding job. He is on his way. Doesn't mean he's going to be on his way to be undisputed, because it's going to hit a roadblock over that purse split. Trust me. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'm in the breeze.